Good Monday to you again, everybody in COM 731. Welcome to week four's review of your material from week three. All right. So, week three, last week, we finished Everything Connects by Hoke et al. And there was some in the final chapters 8 and 9 in the epilogue. You were introduced to some ideas that maybe you hadn't heard or considered before, and I put together some questions, and I wanted to see what your response would be. I mean, most of the questions that you got last time, these fall into the category of hey, what do you think? Okay. So there isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer. I mean, really, the thing to do is to provide an answer. As long as we're on the week three, all right. Excuse me. All of you by now should have gone through the paper assignment, okay. And remember, keep in mind that we're going to break it into two parts, and part one is due the 24th of this month. So that's in about 2 weeks. Okay. So when we have deadlines and stuff, I have to go back and say, hey, everybody, don't forget. Okay. Let's take a look at the questions and see what you did, what you said, and if we can gain any wisdom therefrom. All right, question number one reads, one of the exciting ideas in chapter 8 is how to cultivate curiosity to generate good ideas. Provide an example of where you did this or observed this taking place. So, if this was something that happened with you, or maybe you saw it somewhere else. All right, Charles, let's take you. I think what you're up to here is interesting. You write, one of the things Hoke and Bear present is cultivating curiosity to generate good ideas. They provide evidence from Leonardo da Vinci, Albert Einstein, Emil Baltz, from Leonardo, the authors identify mindful seeing and the ability rooted in preparation for his art, but that remains a theme throughout his life as a sculptor, an engineer, an anatomist, a painter, etc., etc. Okay, let's get to you, though. All right, all true. Okay, for my own example is much more pedestrian. I like the illusion, and relates to artifact creation and conversation and a space full of writing surfaces. In my office has a large whiteboard that helps me capture my ideas. However, I find it more productive when conversing and generating ideas through active discussion with at least one other party. In my profession, we have a phrase, steel sharpens steel, which means your ideas get better in the back and forth of a free discussion. Absolutely. The latest example is when I and my course chief identified gaps in what we were teaching. Gaps we determined negatively impacted our presumed production. We drew our way conceptually through this current course of construction, each presenting ideas, identifying gaps and possible solutions. Excellent. And that is an excellent example. I use something similar. I don't have a whiteboard because I don't have someone else that I have to, be sharing the idea with. But I draw these frequently, sort of draw and noodle and doodle my way to and through the idea in my day planner. All right. So well answered. Okay. Question number 2. Do you subscribe to the practice of blueprinting decisions as described in chapter 9? Why or why not? In other words, do you actually do this? And if you do, why? And if not, maybe there'd be a short answer for some of you, like, yeah, I've never heard of it. Okay, Ranesh, let's see what you're up to here. Planning for short-term and long-term outcomes helps me to make a decision that is challenging for me. Blueprinting allows me to evaluate my options and recognize new avenues as well. This process settles the needs of the wants to ensure that the decision is not just emotional and impulsive. Ultimately, I want to make logical decisions without biases, including mine and others. We need to test this strategy to bring the idea a little closer to reality. This is a quote from Hoke. Okay. I like to visualize what might go wrong and what might happen suddenly to ensure that I'm prepared for the next steps. You know, um, good answer, Ranesh. Those of you that aren't familiar with a SWOT analysis, I encourage you, excuse me, to look that up. And that's SWOT, not like as in the military or the paramilitary police intervention. That stands for strength, weakness, opportunity, and threats. And so Google SWOT analysis and look at, say, a SWOT analysis chart. Okay. And, I'm not recommending or saying you want to run a SWOT analysis for, what am I going to have for lunch today? But if you're thinking about a career change, or if you're in a company or a business, and there's a new idea that's coming out that you're attached to, whether it's the implementation or the ideation, that is the creation of it, try a SWOT analysis. Now, I have to caution you on the instance in which you might do it for your own edification, but you might not want to do a SWOT analysis is when you're in a company and there's a new idea or a new direction coming out, and you're not a part of the team that's creating it, the ideation or the implementation. You're just responsible for following along. A number of you in some of the subsequent answers pointed out that people by nature don't like change. I think, Chuck, you gave an example of someone at your work that just doesn't see some of the drag that's on some of the courses that he designed so many years ago, and you wish he did. That's human nature. And so typically we tend to focus on the negative. So if you come out with a SWOT analysis, most people are going to tend to focus on your evaluation of the weaknesses of the idea and the threat to the idea, not the strengths and the opportunities of the idea. Keep this in mind as communication experts as you are, and apply this understanding in your communications, whatever the venue, whether that's in your relationships with your spouses or your partners or your children or your co-workers. People tend to focus on the negative. So either, you certainly don't lead with it, and don't finish with it. Okay. And if you can find another way to approach it, rather than the bluntness of this isn't going to work, or this is likely to fail, because use that, because that tends to flip the off switch. They don't hear anything else you say from that point forward. And it tends to hyper focus the listeners on what you don't like. All right. It's just human nature. Okay. Question number 3. What is one of the most effective means to create long-term value in an organization? Please give an example of how new communication technology is used to create long-term value, and provide a web link to that. Okay, Candace, you had a very interesting response. You said one of the most effective means of creating long-term value in an organization is by attending to the varied holistic aspects of value, or to the ways our individual lives and organizations can enrich the lives of others. And there you're quoting from Hoke. Yes. Provides examples of how Apple engages customers in a way that creates long-term value by creating ownership experience. And as well, Apple, let me just interject, Apple has done an absolutely brilliant job of creating a culture around the products that its customers consume. Strategies such as tilting laptop screens at a 70-degree angle in order to invite customers to interact with them and thereby create an emotional connection to the product. In essence, when an organization like Apple implements this strategy, the customer becomes emotionally invested in the product. True. All very, very true. And so you, for the purpose of our discussion, back to you, Candace. One example of a new communication technology, or maybe not new technology, but a new platform, because a social media app is not new technology. That is designed to create long-term value is Be Real, a social media app that strives to be more authentic more authentic than most social media platforms. Sorry, you wrote that well. I read it poorly. Be Real achieves this goal by randomly notifying its users that they have a 2-minute window to take a photo of what they're doing at the moment. For those unfamiliar with the app, and then you provide a link. And unlike other social media apps, this one does not have filters, and it also requires users to take a photo with both their front-facing and rear-facing, back-facing cameras. And to see their friends' photos, users must post first. No stalking. So turning back to long-term value, Be Real creates long-term value for its users by giving them the opportunity to connect with their friends on the daily in an authentic way. I think you mean on a daily basis in the authentic way. Okay, we get you. Okay, interesting. And that's a tough space, the social media application space, because just about everything that one might think of doing is being done within the social media application space. Now, I am familiar with Be Real. I don't use Be Real. I don't use any social media applications. It's not that I dislike social media, but I have reasons for that. And if you want to know, ask me in an email, and I will tell you. Even though I spend my minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, and years studying social media and teaching other about it. Paradoxical, I know. Okay, let's take a look at question number 4. What do you think of the proposition in Chapter 8 of dating ideas? Have you ever done this? Actually, I love this. I do this a lot, and I mean, and I don't. I mean, dating ideas. You don't necessarily have to have like a whole spectrum of varying experiences to date ideas. If you find there's a particular place or process that engages your mind in the one thing and then helps sort of unlock that creative flow for another thing, do that. Now, for me, and I'll get to your answers here in just a second, but for me, that's being in outdoors, being in wilderness. There's simply something about the makeup of the physical environment, the lack of straight lines and sharp angles, the narrowness of the color palette. I mean, except for fields that are in bloom with flowers, most of natural space is fairly narrow shade of green or brown. All right, but anyway, there's just something about that space that unlocks idea flow in my head. But let's get to you, Cheryl. Hoke and Bear discussed the concept of dating ideas as being intentional about the breadth of experience that we all allow ourselves to have. This concept training ourselves helps in having a better understanding of who we are, living more mindfully, helps us create a process of generating ideas. In other words, be more expressive or maybe even expansive about your experiences. Excuse me, to be more expressive, it helps to have experienced different things, such as the arts, the ballet, a movie, thus the means for our ideation. And again, and you go on here, Cheryl, to say, that you've been blessed to travel around the world and have a number of experiences, Broadway show in New York, soldiers during Fox News, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, seeing the Houston Astros play, going to places like Japan and Okinawa, Korea, the Philippines, work at the Pentagon. Great. So if it's the multiplicity of experiences that helps your ideation in other areas, fantastic. If it's a more narrow range, for instance, there's a couple of really good, world-class art museums near where I live. And I've had the great and good answer, by the way, Cheryl. I've had the great blessing to be in many of the great museums of the world: National Gallery in London, the Louvre in Paris, the Vatican in Rome, the Uffizi in Florence, the Guggenheim in New York. You know, I've really been lucky. There are a couple of really, really good museums near where I live. Okay. 2 or 3 times a year, I'll go. And although there may be a special exhibit, their core collection doesn't change. But in seeing the same thing, I often see it from a different perspective. I think about new things. I come up with ideas for new things. I get the same with music. There are specific songs that I've listened to my whole life. You know, and my wife, when we'll be driving along, and I'll put on music, and her question to me is, do you have anything that's been recorded in the last 20 years? Well, yes, I do. I have a very wide musical taste, but again, there are certain pieces, whether it's a musical composition, say like something by Vivaldi, or it's something more 20th century. Once that I don't know, maybe my brain just gets trained to think outside of the box when I'm hearing that particular piece of music. I don't know. So for you, it doesn't have to be this. You go, well, I don't have the time or the opportunity to go to all these places. It doesn't matter. Find the thing. Being outside in a wilderness trek, being in a museum, going to a baseball game, that opens up your creative flow for other things, right? And that's what they're talking about. Okay, good answers. I hope you enjoyed the book. In the first video, we talk about the new book that we're going to start. So we're going to leave that. Remember, keep working on your papers. Excuse me. If you have any questions about those, please get in touch with me. I think about you. I pray about you. I hope that you're all well and you have a wonderful, wonderful week. I will see you on Canvas. Bye-bye.